Good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode number 16 of At Home with Jim and Dee. And what have you done?
It was off.
Okay, and we're trying to make another video tonight. We've got that ever faithful signal from YouTube that says bad. And it says that you guys might experience some buffering, but I don't know what else we can do. We just have to do what we do and do the best we can with what we have. So we've got some couple songs for you tonight, and my first thing is I want to thank everybody who's been telling your friends, and we've been getting more subscriptions, and that's helpful for our site. And we just want to get started tonight with some tunes by the Dave Clark Five. Now, the Dave Clark Five, we're actually the second band that came to America in the British invasion. The Beatles came, and then the next band was the Dave Clark Five. The Beatles signed to play. I was one of those however many 70 million or whatever people that tuned in on the first night that the Beatles showed up on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I saw that in their next weeks and so on. And the Dave Clark Five were the next band to come. The funny thing is that the Dave Clark Five were not truly gone. They didn't truly go professional till they came to America. They had day jobs, and they kept their day jobs until I think when they got the call to do the Ed Sullivan Show. Dave Clark went to lead singer Mike Smith, who played the organ, and he was a lead singer, and he told him, he says, you need to go into work on Monday and tell them this will be your last week. And he says, oh, okay. Why? He says, well, because on this coming Sunday, we're going to be playing on the Ed Sullivan Show. Now, Mike Smith was kind of taken back. He had never, he was still working his full-time job, of course. And he said he had never been on an airplane before. So his first airplane ride was going to be from England to New York. And so he told his boss he was leaving on Friday, so he quit his job on Friday. On Saturday, they got a plane to America, and on Sunday, for the first time, they were full-timers, and they appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. What a way to start
First full-time
Yeah,
gig?
yeah, was on the Ed Sullivan Show, and people like me loved it. And so we're going to do a couple of their songs tonight, and I'm going to start with one. That was one I really liked. It was a song that was called Catch Us If You Can. Yeah, are you?
I think so.
Here they come again. Catch us if you can. Time to get a move on. We will yell with all of our might. Catch us if you can. 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 Now we gotta run. No more time for fun. When we get angry, we will yell with all of our might. Catch us if you can. Catch us if you can. There you go. That was the title song from their movie. The Beatles did a movie, of course. It was called A Hard Day's Night, and everybody thought, oh, now everybody's got to do movies. So they did. There was a lot of bands that did movies. Dave Clark 5 did a movie. Jerry and the Pacemakers did a movie. The Hermits did a movie. Sometime later, even the Monkees, who had a TV show, did a movie. Everybody wanted to do movies. But when they first came to America, they were the first band to tour America too. The Beatles just came, did their show on Ed Sullivan left, and I think they might have done a show and did a couple shows or something, but they didn't really tour. Dave Clark 5 were the first ones to tour, and they did quite well on their tours. Things were a lot different back then. You just kind of go into the ticket booth after the concert and say, "Give me the money," and you take a satchel full of money and go. And so they were the second band that came, and as time went on, I really sort of gravitated to them because of a couple things. One, they weren't like all the other bands necessarily. They had a singer that was just amazing. Mike Smith was the name of the singer, and he himself used to say, "I can't really sing. I just scream in tune," and and he was a rocker, man. He was a screamer and a rocker. They did songs like "Glad All Over" and "Do You Love Me" and "Bits and Pieces," and they just screamed and yelled and carried on, and it was great. I loved it. And the other thing I liked about them was they weren't just two guitars, bass, and drums. They had saxophones and organs, and so they had a bigger sound. And I also liked on their albums, and as I found out when I went to see them live, I also found out on their albums and stuff they did instrumentals. I loved rock instrumentals. One of these weeks I'll probably do a couple instrumentals from the old days. But I loved the rock instrumentals, and they were the only band that was really doing the rock instrumentals. So they had a screamer and rock instrumentals. So I really liked the Dave Clark 5. And now none of these bands came to San Diego at first, and that's where I was. Some of them came to Los Angeles, but none of them really came to San Diego. And the first major group to come to San Diego was the Dave Clark 5. It was been about, I think it was in November. So it was in November of 1964. Now, I had a friend, Mike McClellan, who I had met him at the races. My dad used to race every week at Balboa Stadium in San Diego, and Mike lived downtown. He would come to the races, and I got to know him. And he got a job working for Bob. I can't remember Bob's last name anymore. But Bob had a company, an usher company. So he hired ushers to take care of seating arrangements and so on in the concerts. And a few times we worked for Bob. We did ushering, but we did lots of other things. We weren't like everybody else. We were special. And but we were the first job we had for Bob was working at the Dave Clark 5 concert. Now I was 14 years old. I was probably like 5'2" and 102 pounds. I was a little scrawny guy. And so the seating part wasn't hard, finding people's seats. It was in a place called Westgate Park, which now there's a big shopping mall there. It was the place where the San Diego Padres played before they became a major league team. They were a farm team, I think, for Cincinnati or something. And so they played in this stadium. And the seats, I think the seating was only 2,000 or 3,000, and then they had all the people out on the grass and everything. And so a couple things happened that surprised me. The first thing was I went down to Mike's fairly early in the day because we were supposed to go down to the stadium early in the day. But when I got there, he couldn't leave because he had got another job. That same day was his first day working for a car wash. Now, he was like 1 or 2 years older than me. And his background was he was very poor, and he didn't have any way to get any money except to work, and he worked. And so I was kind of frustrated because I had to wait around all day for him to get off of work from the car wash, which I think he worked till like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Then we went on down to the stadium. When we got there, the first thing that Bob told Mike was, "Where were you? I thought you guys were coming down here early." And he goes, I had to work at the car wash. He says, "Well, the Dave Clark 5 went horseback riding. You could have gone horseback riding with them.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah. I was ready to strangle McClellan. I said, you work for $2 an hour at the car wash. We could have gone horseback riding with the Dave Clark Five. Anyway, so that was a big disappointment. That was a disappointment. The other thing that I found out, once we got the concert going, there was other warm-up acts and stuff. But when it came time for the Dave Clark Five to come on, Bob got all the ushers together and he said, okay, here's what you guys got to do. You guys got to ring the stage, and you have to do the thing where you hold hands and keep, if the girls start rushing the stage, you guys got to keep them back. I'm thinking these girls are bigger than me. And so that was a challenge for me to try to keep those girls back. We did get rushed, and I didn't let go. And they nearly called off this. They threatened to call off the concert, but the DJ, whoever was in charge, said, "Now Dave wants to keep going, so we need you guys to behave." And so they sat down and screamed instead of rushing the stage and screaming. And this was one of the bands, from the early days. This is a band I got to see twice. In fact, the next November was actually more unusual because they came on a weekday to the Carousel Theater in West Covina, and believe it or I couldn't believe it. My mom let me ditch school.
What?
Yeah, and took me and Mike down to the bus depot in downtown San Diego.
No way.
Oh yeah, and we got bus tickets to West Covina, and then had to find our way from the bus station to the auditorium, where we got to see the Dave Clark Five for the second time. That time we didn't work at the concert. We had to actually buy tickets. That was a terrible thing for me to have to buy tickets. But I had to buy tickets to go see them. And they were just as good, if not better. And they were actually, between the time when I had seen the Dave Clark Five the first time and the second time, in between there, I had seen the Beatles. And I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but when it came to the live performance, the Dave Clark Five were much more together. They played much better live than the Beatles did. And now the Beatles have complained and said that that's why they quit, because they thought they weren't getting, they were losing their musicianship and all that stuff. But Dave Clark Five, they had just huge walls of amp. They had like this wall of sound with just giant amps everywhere, and they had a really big full sound. And another thing I liked about the Dave Clark Five was when I went to see them live, two things. First of all, they didn't play everything just like the record. They would ad-lib and improvise and stuff like that. And then on top of that, they would do songs that they had not recorded. Now, some people hate that. They hate it that when they go to a concert, they just want to hear the songs off the records. But I loved it. I got to hear them do songs that they didn't do. They always started, the two times I saw them, they started off with this song, which was the Peter Gunn theme, which they could do because they had a saxophone. And they did songs. They did "Hang On Sloopy," and they did an old jazz tune from back in the '40s. They were just a lot of fun for me to watch. And when this next song came out that we're going to do, this was a song that Dave Clark had wanted to put out. They had recorded it. He wanted to put out. The record companies kept fighting him because they were stomping and rocking out. And this song was, well, relatively speaking, it was a slow, mild song. It's not actually all that slow. I think it's still like 120 beats a minute or something. But compared to the other ones, it was like a ballad. And the record company didn't want it out. And Dave Clark said, "No, I know this is a hit." And I remember the first time it came on the radio at my house, my mom said, "Oh, those guys are through." I said, "What?" She says, "Oh, they can't make it on these slow songs. They got to keep rocking out." And surprisingly enough, this song was also a big hit for them. And we found it's a big hit when we play live. And so this is another song by the Dave Clark Five we're going to do. This one's called "Because."
Try to make you happy when you're blue.
Well,
That's it for the tribute.
okay. Moving on from the Dave Clark 5, I wanted to say thank you myself to everyone who's been subscribing. We are we got like 79, one more, and there will only be 20 to go before we hit the 100. So I'm jazzed about that. And there are a lot of views. Amazingly, the song that gets watched the most, listened to the most, is one of the kids' songs. We didn't write it, but it was on. It's called "It's a Happy Day," and it was on the Agape Land album. And so that's kind of amazing to us. People out there must be searching for it. It's got more hits than just about anything. Some people wonder what we do
So do I.
for a living.
Yeah, I wonder about that too.
These days, I think we do this show. It takes so long to get ready for it.
Yeah, but you ain't making a living off this.
And one of the reasons we are doing tributes, and we like to do tributes, is for about the last 8 years or so, we have been doing oldies in order to help supplement. We go out in our local community. Of course, we're known as Bongo and the Point, and I've told you that story before. But the reason we kind of don't have regular jobs is because we are involved in another enterprise that is a full-time ministry. So we kind of have.
Yeah, but when you think of an enterprise, you think of money making, and I don't know.
Well, there's another song we'll have to sing one of these days about laying up treasures in heaven. But our ministry is called Ministry of Helps, and we have been doing this Ministry of Helps since 1995. It all started when we came from California, and we wanted to try to find some ways to be a help to our friend Winky Pratney. And we weren't sure what was going to happen. We weren't sure how it was going to look, but very soon after we got here to Texas and got settled in a rent house, we were at the mall one day just kind of strolling around, and we saw this kiosk, and it said, "The World Wide Web." Something like, "Discover the World Wide Web." And Jim and I looked at each other and we said, "The World Wide Web? What the heck is that?"
Now I had tried America Online, and that was just at that point for me that was a scam. They were just ripping me off, and I tried to cancel it, and they kept taking my money, and I had arguments and fights with the bank. But anyway, I didn't know what the World Wide Web was, but I did know about bulletin boards and America Online, so I knew something about online means to download files and games and things like that, but I'd never heard of the web yet.
So as we were standing in that mall and talking to this guy about what the World Wide Web was, suddenly we realized what we could do. And it meant everything had to change. So that next week, we talked about it, and I went and got a job at a temp agency, and eventually that way got a job at a bank. And Jim set himself up in one corner of the master bedroom.
Oh, dear.
And taught himself how to hard code HTML.
Yep.
That was before the days of WYSIWYG. It was before the days of apps and programs that helped you.
Yeah, and templates and just plugging in things. Yeah, it was.
So my dear musician husband had to become a programmer in order to make this idea work. But we did. And our URL is moh.org, Ministry of Helps.
Are you going to tell how we got that name?
Yeah. Well, we went to
Winky,
and he, at that point, this was just all too weird, and he really didn't want us. We wanted to get a domain name with his name in it, because our plan was that we should take some of the the tracks and the books and the audio things. We had all these ideas and we didn't know how to make any of them work. So we started with these things called teaching tracks that were really important to us when we were first getting grounded. And so he didn't want to use his name. And so we said, well, what are we? What are we going to do? And so we said, well, we were just discovering at that point, and that's a whole nother story that maybe Jim can tell sometime.
Oh, you don't want to tell that story.
Well, can you do it quick? You can do it quicker than me.
Okay.
Because it's already 22 minutes.
Okay. Oh, is it? I can't see that far. Okay, I'll keep this short. We oh my gosh. Yeah, it is hard to tell this story short. We had spent our lives, especially our married lives, helping other people get their ministries going, or at least getting in on the ground floor. And when these other people didn't have help, didn't have money, they needed someone to get them going. And we would go there, and we'd be all in, and we'd just go ahead and do it. Just trust God for the for the food, the rent, everything else, and do what we had learned to do well in the Agape Force. And so we did this over and over. And you're right, we can't tell all these stories, but the bottom line for these stories was we would come in, help somebody, we would catch their vision, help them get it going. And then when it did catch and it started to be successful, and then other people saw what it was, like, oh, now I get it. Well, at that point, people would go, okay, so they'd start hiring real people to do this. And all of a sudden, we would find ourselves out in the cold with nothing to do. And we were always being completely and totally depressed because we thought we had committed to something, and then we thought we had commitments from others, and it didn't turn out that way. Well, that led to a lot of disappointments, a lot of broken heart. And when we came here in 1990, we came here really in the end of 94, and in 1995 there was a guy out here by the name of Bob Ayala. Bob was a singer from Southern California. He was a blind man, and a great singer, good songwriter, good guitarist, and he had been working with Last Days Ministries with Keith Green, and then Keith died, and eventually Bob had to go on his own, and he was traveling all the time. Now, this guy was amazing. He would travel by plane all over the country, in fact, around the world, and all he would do is his wife would take him and drop him off at the airport. And here he was, a blind guy. He would make his way all around the world and stuff. So he was here, and I don't remember how we first got to know him, but I got to know him. We liked him. We hung out with him. I really liked him. We were both from Southern California, like same kind of music and stuff. And he was saving up money and pre-selling CDs so that he could go into a studio and record a new album, because he didn't have any albums to take with him when he traveled. So I said, Bob, you're going to take $5,000 and give it to these guys to record your album, and then that money will be gone. Now, he had some equipment already. He had a computer, and he had speakers, and he had some stuff already, but he needed some more stuff if he was going to have a recording studio, which is what I wanted to see him do, set up a recording studio. I said, let's take that money and let's go and buy the rest of the stuff you need and set you up with a recording studio. He says, I can't do a recording studio by myself. I'm blind. I said, well, I'll come over and help you engineer. And that way, when you're done, you'll still have the studio, you'll have an album, but then you can do another album and another album and so on. And so I talked him into it, and his wife took him down. Well, first he and I went to Dallas, and we went and bought the rest of the equipment he needed. This was the old days when everything had to be done with wires. And so Bob went and got on a plane and took off for a week and a half or something like that. While he was gone, I went to his house, set up the studio, did all the wiring, got everything working, did some test recordings and make sure everything was working. And when he came back, it was good to go. So we worked on his album. Now, during the process, he would have me sit him down in front of the console. It was big, like the old day with consoles with sliders and faders and panning and EQ and all these different things. He would say, okay, tell me what each one was, and he would feel it. And he would go, okay, so this one's the panning. This one's the low EQ. This is the mid EQ. And he would got to know the thing. By the time we were done with the album, he could just about do it himself. And the cool thing was, when he finished that album, he doubled his income, which was an amazing thing. And I was so happy. Only the difference between helping Bob and everybody else is Bob didn't necessarily give me the boot. We still remain friends, but Dee and I came home and talked about it, and that's where we got the name.
Right. Suddenly, after many, many years of wondering why we weren't preachers and prophets and all the things that everyone wanted to be, and we realized after that instance that there was a pattern, and this pattern was the same over and over and over again, and that instead of us being a failure at trying to be what everyone else was, we were actually a success at what God wanted us to be, which the world didn't see, and even the church didn't seem to fully understand for sure at that point, and I'm not sure if they do yet. We realized that we had a gift that God had given us that is mentioned in the Bible called a ministry of helps, and that the Lord gave us the ability to catch a vision when there was nothing of substance yet there, and to take that to the point where we could hand it off to someone else. So when we decided to do a website, the very first website, the first one we actually did was smokeandmirrors.com, because we were so tickled and so jazzed that you could be sitting in your bedroom and make this fancy thing that could go out over the world, and you could look like you were big time.
What had happened was Winky had gone to a conference, and there was a bunch of big shots, and I won't name names, but these were big shots in the business. And this was still probably 1995 or 6 or something like that. And these people had been looking at his website, which was our website, and they were blown away, and they were talking about, how cool it was. And the one guy's going, yeah, we just did the first third of our website, and we only spent $250,000 on it. And this other guy's talking about, yeah, we've only got 12 guys on staff to do this. But Winky, your site is so cool, and we love your site. We had no money and no help and hand coding everything. And so we got a kick. That's why we called it Smoke and Mirrors, because on the web then you could make it look like you were much more than you really are.
But this was so early on that we got a 3-letter domain name, MOH, that stands for Ministry of Helps. And believe me, we've made a lot of people mad around the world because MOH, we found out much later, is a very desirable
any three-letter
yeah.
is desirable.
So we got it before all the Ministry of Health people in other countries and other ministries of helps in various places, all kinds of different MOHs have wanted that, and we haven't let it go because it is a throwback to to our early entry into the whole World Wide Web. So we became MOH.org, and we set out to start to put discipleship materials. And even today, you can go to MOH.org, and it says materials for disciples and soul winners. And the whole idea there is that there should be the things that you need, the resources you need to follow hard after God yourself and to help others
and for you
get grounded, and for you to use these things to help other people get grounded.
Disciple others. Yeah.
Essentially, that's still what we're doing all these years later. It's grown into more, much more than just that one website. We can talk about that later. But right now, we need to let you go. We were going to do one more song. This harkens back to the last couple of weeks we've been talking about childlikeness. And that kind of faith that Jim was talking about that we learned in Agape Force, that we're going to seek first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and we're going to trust him for the basics. Grown-ups have a hard time. And so this is a song we wrote that refers to several kind of little cultural proverbs that you hear around. And it also makes people think about some fairy tales about people who got wishes and what happened to them.
Oh, you turned it on. Okay.
And so you'll find this a very strange song. It's there's probably not a niche that you're going to be able to fit it into, but we're going to sing it anyway. It's called "If Wishes Were Fishes." If you caught a leprechaun down in your shoe, found a lamp you could rub for a genie or two, my dear little one, when all wishing was through, would you need some more wishes? The first to undo. If wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets, and there'd be no telling what wishes we'd catch. And if they came true, we'd sure be surprised. Still, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. If wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets, and there'd be no telling what trouble we'd get. And if they came true, we'd well up with pride. Still, if wishes were shelter, we'd all get inside. I'm sure we'll be wishing as long as we live, just as long as there are things that we want but can't have. So look at your heart, work hard each day, but instead of just wishing, let's learn how to pray. If wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets, and there'd be no telling what wishes we'd catch. And if they came true, we'd sure be surprised. Still, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. If wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets, and there'd be no telling what trouble we'd get. And if they came true, we'd well up with pride. Still, if wishes were shelter, we'd all get inside. If wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets, and there'd be no telling what trouble we'd get. And if they came true, we'd well up with pride. Still, if wishes were shelter, we'd all get inside. If wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets, and there'd be no telling what wishes we'd catch. And if they came true, we'd sure be surprised. Still, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. I'm sure we'll be wishing as long as we live, just as long as there are things that we want but can't have. So look at your heart, work hard each day, and instead of just wishing, let's learn how to pray. If wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets, and there'd be no telling what wishes we'd catch. And if they came true, we'd sure be surprised. Still, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. And if wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets, and there'd be no telling what trouble we'd get. And if they came true, we'd well up with pride. Still, if wishes were shelter, we'd all get inside. Well, good night, folks.
Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you, and don't forget to tell your friends and like us, and what's the other one? Subscribe, all that good stuff.
And our names are Jim and Dee, and we approve this message.
Thank you.